Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Informed Dissent podcast. We are a news podcast that brings you dispatches from the gender culture war. I am Ben Appel, and I'm here with Lisa Sellen Davis, Eliza Mondegreen, and Cori Cohn. Jamie is on assignment today, so she won't be joining us most likely. So it's just going to be us four. Today, we're going to talk about kind of where we are, a few weeks into Trump's second term. A lot of executive orders have come out. There have been a lot of changes. Hospitals have been pausing what they call gender affirming care for minors. As a result of one of those executive orders, there's been lawsuits that have been filed, a lot of protests going on. People are freaking out. People are rejoicing. Trump's posing for pictures with dozens of young women and girls, in the Oval Office, signing executive orders, protecting women's sports, um, and scoring a lot of easy wins thanks to the Democrats. And so we wanted to talk about where we are and what we've been feeling, but also uh, we kind of wanted to figure out or chat or brainstorm ways to talk to both Democrats and Republicans. So, Democrats talk to them about, try to lower the temperature a little bit and kind of figure out how we can help people to not freak out, um, and to, because the press has just been, has really failed us on these matters, miserably. So one of our goals is to try to help correct that. And a lot of us have been working on that for a long time. So we'll get started. Um, who would like to be? Eliza, do you want to kick us off here and just tell us what you've been thinking and where you are right now?
Um, I was hoping you were gonna say Lisa, but okay. Uh, yeah, we've all been on our group text chain all
Hmm.
week thinking about just kind of the upheaval of the last couple of months and how it felt like there was this window of opportunity right after the election for progressives in particular to just kind of think out loud about, okay, maybe did we get some of this wrong, particularly when it comes to gender? That just seemed like there was this greater openness. And it feels like now that Trump is in office, the atmosphere has completely changed, and it really feels like that window has closed again. Hopefully not for 4 years, but who knows? And that's been pretty painful to see, in large part because so many people are like genuinely really terrified, but
Hmm.
also because like I know two of you guys are in New York City. Um, there was the big protest outside the
Hmm.
NYU Langone
Yeah,
clinic, and is it Langone or is it just Langone?
I say
Anyway,
Langone, but I could be wrong.
okay, I assumed it was like one of the like Italian. Anyway, doesn't matter. Um, it's we're seeing an escalation in rhetoric again, where that it seemed like there were threats being made against hospital officials who had said that they were no longer going to be providing certain interventions for people under the age of 19. Um,
What
and
threats
there
do
was
you
also
mean?
just another,
You said,
oh, like we're going to be on your doorstep
right.
and like we're watching you. Like
Hmm.
I would not want a mob that big and that angry on my doorstep. That
Hmm.
seems like a threat.
Yeah, I think
Um,
maybe you were talking about there was Tiffany, I think Caban is, or Caban, New York council member for District 22 in Queens, was one of the people that gave a
yeah,
speech at that protest and was saying, we will not rest. We're putting you on notice. New York Presbyterian, Mount Sinai,
yeah,
NYU Langone. We will show up at your doorstep, and then did this very dramatic call in response. We will protect trans kids.
yeah,
Um, yeah, go ahead.
yeah. And just the escalation in rhetoric where it's like, okay, we may be seeing another mutation where it's like, okay, maybe gender affirming care has become problematic, but now we're going to call it life affirming care. So you really can't be against that. I've just been seeing a lot of that kind of thing where the stakes are being raised again and everybody's being asked to jump higher.
Are they really being raised, or is this just something that we saw back in 2023 coming up again? Because what I recall is that there were multiple states where the activists who opposed any of these types of reforms would lead young people into a protest called a die-in. They did this in Texas, where
That's true.
all of these young people emulated their own death in the floors of the legislature, which is so culty that
yes,
I don't know why you would try to ingrain in somebody's psyche that they should emulate their own deaths for political ends. I mean, it's clear actually why you would do that, but it's unclear why that was able to happen without there being more notice from the media that it was happening. But I would say that until we get to the point of having more die-ins, I'm not sure that I would say that the rhetoric has exceeded previous levels.
I agree with that, and I
no,
think
you're right.
yeah, I agree. I think that maybe what when as Eliza was speaking and what you're saying, Cori, we did. I think some of us felt a little bit hopeful, that there was going to be. I don't know. There was that moment, so it kind of almost feels like, just kind of the whiplash of oh wait, this hasn't gone anywhere. This is the reality. Nobody's becoming more sane. I mean, I don't know why I would think that an executive order stating that we must end the chemical and surgical mutilation of kids that's signed by Trump is going to calm things. Obviously not, but in previous months, seeing how so many Democratic voters did come out for Trump and so many people did state specifically that this was such an important issue for them when determining their vote, it kind of made me think like the fog is clearing slightly. And it just made me kind of not naive, but just forget what the rhetoric and how massive the opposing side in this debate is and how radical they are.
I have a thought experiment for you, for all of us. So
Let's do it.
Imagine that there are 1,000 people, and that of those 1,000, 100 of them feel strongly on one side of the issue versus the other side of the issue. And of those 100, 10 of them feel extraordinarily strongly on one side of the issue or the other side of the issue. Okay, so that's the setup for the thought experiment. Now imagine that of 100 who feel very strongly of the issue, that 50 of them change their minds and they go to neutral. That leaves 50 remaining, 10 of whom feel very strongly about the issue. How would you know the difference between the previous state and the new state based only on how they behave in their activism? How would you discern that there was any change?
They would stop participating in protests, or I don't know. I mean, the media would have to report on those who changed their minds or moved to the center. They would have to, the media would have to complicate the narrative in order
But how would we notice that had happened? Because
right, the press coverage would always be of the 10, right? Yeah.
Well, I seem to be obsessed with waiting on hold at my local NPR station college. I've done it every day, just about. And I always say I'm writing a book about the history of gender affirming care. I'd like to add some context. The only time they let me through was about immigration, and I have just come out, not looking great, but because I actually have much. I don't have, my feelings aren't as strong, but I know that Americans feel very strongly about it. But I keep trying to call in and ask them to expand the way they are covering everything to do with Trump. And today they had on the co-host of this show on the media, which they are reporting from inside their own asses because their heads are up their asses. They are so out of touch. And he was saying this co-host was talking about what the media's job is, and we're not doing a good job because we really have to explain exactly how bigoted Trump's, words are or actions. And they keep bringing up blaming that terrible plane crash on DEI. And I keep saying to people, right, that it's true that there is no evidence that plane crash had anything to do with DEI, but it's also true that there's a lawsuit against Buttigieg for the DEI program among air traffic controllers, which led in for several years people who were far underqualified because they were rigging the exams to racially diversify the program. And that's a real issue. So do I think that the media should tell me that this is a false and bigoted claim? No, that is not what I want. What I want to say is, yeah, there's no evidence for that, but actually it's related to an issue that actually is really bothering a lot of Americans, which is that we prized identity over every other possible qualification. And Ben, you mentioned the media failing us. If you look at the coverage of the executive orders, for instance, the New York Times headline I saw about the executive order that says males cannot play on female sports teams, it says banning transgender people from sports. And that's not true. You are welcome to play sports on a co-ed team or in accordance with your biological sex. So they are not helping people understand how we got to this moment. And they're stoking fear and outrage, and they're completely unaware, going back to Eliza's wise words and insights of their own radicalization.
Okay. I hear what you're saying.
Okay.
You're trying to, and I'm going to put it into the terms of my thought experiment, Lisa.
Okay.
What you're saying is, of those 100 people who feel strongly about the issue, I don't care if 90 of them change their minds. I'm really concerned about the 10. How come the 10 aren't changing their minds?
How do we know anybody's changed their minds? I mean, look,
that's the thought experiment.
Well, okay, here's my life. My life is consists of a series of text chains. One of them, well, actually, honestly, the Ladies of Run Club that I always talk about, there's actually 3 text chains, but there is I would say 95% of people on those chains consume the same media and all seem to think the same thing. And I'm in there, sending a little Rui Teixeira article about how Democrats lost their way and poking at it, right? Then I'm in a text chain that was formerly of politically homeless people, several of whom have gone full MAGA. And I'm in there saying, you guys are just as radicalized as you were before. And Trump is doing a lot of crazy stuff, and you're allowed to criticize him. Just because you left, the liberalism does not mean that you have to, constantly express your fealty to a person who is not worthy of it. And we can take some pleasure in seeing them burn it all down because maybe that was deserving to happen. But what they're replacing it with is objectively frightening. So I am kind of occupying these different digital spaces. I try to have this omnivorous media diet, and I go back and forth between these spaces, trying not to get radicalized and trying to like offer context to different kinds of radicalized people, basically to get them to see that they're radicalized. And I am not yet seeing people waking up. I'm seeing them dig in. And what I really think about gender identity, teaching it, medicating it, legislating based on it, is it's a tragedy. And the real tragedy is digging in further on it, because we should let it go. When I say we, I mean liberals. We got to let it go. Just stop teaching it. It's not real. And there are serious problems. I don't know what's happening with Elon Musk, but it seems not good. And we should just acquiesce. Men, we know that biological sex is real because we are here on this planet, as far as we know. Because
we're all here having this stupid conversation because of sex.
We're thinking we exist, and we know enough that male and female parts fuse to create more human beings. We've got to listen to the words of Frozen and let it go, because worse stuff is happening. But I don't see them letting it go. That's
Lisa, do you ever listen to this after we've put it up for the public?
That I'm afraid to answer that question.
I don't either, so that's fine. Like, I already listened to it once when we recorded it. I want you to listen back to at least this part, because you're completely eliding my thought experiment, and it's something that I want you to consider, because I believe that between the work that you have done and Eliza has done and Jamie, Ben, maybe even me, that when we look at the 100 people who feel strongly about this issue, that if we went back 4 years, there were the 100 people. If we look today, it's probably 50 people. We have persuaded the 50 people who had the weakest commitments to their side that either they were wrong, or they needed more information, or that they discovered things that invalidated some of their assumptions, and that we have made real progress. But that for you, your benchmark are the 10 most committed people in that group of 1,000, and that you're frustrated that you haven't even been able to peel one of them away yet. But I put it to you that you will not be able to peel one of them away, because they are so committed to that position. Your success does not hinge on convincing the 10 most zealous believers in that cohort. And you yourself have given us stories over time about, oh, this person has gotten back to me and said, I feel differently about it. And it's based on things that you have told them. So you are succeeding, but please do not judge your success at helping people to understand this issue based on whether you have changed the most extreme people on the issue.
I hear that, and I recognize that we can't really tell. And I also recognize that the New York Times, reported that the majority of Americans don't support these ideas. Even actually, they didn't report that. They buried that part of their poll, but other people reported on that part of their poll. But as we speak, I believe possibly right at this minute, my kids are getting a lesson in gender identity at their school, taught as a fact and not taught as a belief. And when I heard NPR talking about gender ideology this morning, the trans person they interviewed said, what's offensive about that term is that it presents my identity as a belief. And I'm just like, what do you think identity is, man? Right? Your identity is not a fact. That's a subjective experience of yourself. So yeah, you don't like it. You don't like the truth. You
Mhm.
can't handle the truth.
Well, your guys are both talking about, that thought experiment is really useful. And what Lisa is talking about is just how embedded and entrenched these ideas and this ideology is into our institutions. I mean, it's one thing to know that you've convinced a lot of people, and you can see how, like you said, media, I think you said on the media, Lisa, or media mat on the media, and also the New York Times now. Also, they're very out of touch with the
Mhm.
majority of Americans. So I understand Lisa is very focused as a journalist on getting media outlets, news outlets to amend their approach to this, which I agree, or if you are saying this, would do a lot to calm things and lower the temperature. If you report accurately on this, and that perhaps it might get one of those final 10 to at least, I don't know, stop threatening doctors. I don't know, that are not giving top surgeries to 15-year-olds. So, but these are so embedded and so entrenched. Like Lisa said, what our kids are learning. Lisa, I read your Broadview this morning. I've texted about this already, but you have screenshots of the lesson that your daughter came home with, right?
Well, they sent out the curriculum, I guess,
Okay.
to prepare us. I mean, probably just to prepare for me.
Okay.
I'm,
Can we talk about that for a sec? Because this is where it begins, right? I mean, I read through it, and I said on Substack, it's like, parents, your children are being taught pseudoscience designed to make them mentally ill. I mean, it, it is it is a complete pseudoscience and nonsensical. And this is what in New York State, in one of the greatest cities, in freest cities in the world, um, kids are being taught this.
it's the
Um,
law.
it's
It's the
the
law.
tell me about that. Tell me about the law and how did this happen? Who wrote this policy?
I well, I actually, I mean, I imagine it was outsourced to an advocacy group, but we just passed Proposition 1, which is that you cannot discriminate based on gender identity, which is why the AG, Tish James, is trying to strong arm hospitals into continuing to make sure that every 14-year-old girl who wants a double mastectomy can get one,
Right.
because that's
Well,
freedom, justice, in the American way.
But going back to the curriculum,
And
where
in the it is the DOE policy
Mhm.
that kids are taught about gender identity and sexuality, et cetera. And I do not know if these particular slides that I got were created by the health teacher, or if I don't know. I asked for, they're also not cited. And
Exactly.
I feel like, so I think Eliza and I are both on this sexology listserv, and that's a fascinating group of people. But once you start interacting with the people who are experts on this stuff, you see that most of what they're teaching is totally not accurate, and they're just teaching it as fact. They have this myth and fact, and it's all swapped. The myths are presented as facts, and the facts are presented as myths, and um my daughter told me that the teacher said you're allowed to disagree, just don't be unkind. But how do you disagree with something that's presented as fact?
Right. And those facts are, let's see. So a myth. So one of those is people can choose their gender identity, myth or fact. And it's according to this, it's a myth. It says just like sexual orientation, a person doesn't choose to feel male, female, or a combination of both. What we
Yeah.
can choose is what we call ourselves, even if it doesn't match our physical body. For example, male, female, transgender, etc. That's
I
a myth.
actually identify as etc.
Right.
So I'm psyched.
Another one is, so is this a myth or a fact? A person can look like a boy or a man and feel on the inside like they are a girl or a woman.
It's called autogynephilia.
Surprisingly, it doesn't
How
say
about they
that
can
on this
think
slide.
they can think they feel like a girl or a woman, which is of course possible.
It does mention Caitlyn Jenner, though, the slide. For
You
example, when
make me
Caitlyn
feel
Jenner,
like
who was assigned male at birth, announced she was transgender, many people struggled with understanding this because Bruce Jenner was a very masculine Olympic champion.
Hmm.
Once she transitioned and looked like a woman, many people saw the connection. Another good example is Laverne Cox, who is a transgender actress. She is often accepted because she, quote, looks feminine. At the same time, however, it's important to remember that the outside doesn't always have to match the inside. Even before Caitlyn, for example, started altering her appearance, when she was still known as Bruce, she felt on the inside that she was a woman. So we can look one way and feel totally different. And this is gets me. How we feel on the inside, our identity, always takes priority over what is on the outside.
Your subjective reality is the only thing that matters. And wait, that's what we want to tell a bunch of middle schoolers?
Who are all going through puberty and really feeling like the inside doesn't match the outside anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
great plan. Lisa, maybe this is a way to kind of reflect on where you think things are right now. But one question that we got a couple of weeks ago on Substack was like, well, more of a comment. Lisa said she wasn't gonna try to convince Democrats anymore, but now, but that was a resolution that didn't last very long. Can you talk about what happened?
I mean, it's hard because I enjoy, I mean, the people who are living in an echo chamber are cutting themselves off from a really fascinating experience. I am so happy to have a life in which I have interviewed Chase Strangio and people at the Heritage Foundation and all kinds of people in between. And I like feeling that, oh, I don't have to be worked into a frenzy all the time. That hold on, let me allow my knowledge to grow by taking in these different perspectives. It's kind of, I think it could be the great American experience. However, I don't live with or around people like that. My life, my friendships, my community, I have to interact with those people. And I'm getting a lot more comfortable with full pariah status, especially in regards to the school, because since Ben and I spoke at that, school board sub meeting,
And Cori.
and since the superintendent of my kid's school district was a family friend, and I'm becoming the person who sends emails every day, and I should stop. But the thing is that, and one of you mentioned this before, I mean, when I put up a video of our school board meeting, and then when I put some information in one of my far lefty text chains, each time someone reached out to me to say, well, speaking of Cori's thought experiment, you know, to say, yeah, I've changed my mind. You and your pals have helped me see this differently. So it's worth it to me to keep speaking up, because somebody has to see us. We have to be, oh God, this is so self-aggrandizing. I was going to say beacons, but whatever. We have to be visible. We have to be visible so people can say, like, I want to swim, I want to get off this boat. And we have to say we're an island, or we're the shore, or whatever it is. But it's very difficult right now because it's complete mayhem. And I know some people voted for complete mayhem, but other people voted thinking things were going to calm down. And I wonder how those people are feeling.
Yeah.
I wonder if they're starting to think this is, you know, kind of putting the entire gender world into the DTs by just your cold turkey, everything stopping, and you still believe in it and you're terrified, you know, or I wonder if they're saying like, oh, Elon Musk is running our shadow government, or, you know, I wonder if they are starting to realize that that it is a dangerous time and that they need to speak up too.
Right, what do you think? You reminded me that things have been pretty bad also in the recent past, but what are you thinking right now?
Me?
Yeah,
Yes, Cozy Sith Lord.
Yeah, I don't live in Brooklyn, so my viewpoint is pretty different. And I think it's possible that, I was going to say, if you live in Brooklyn, that probably influences how you see the entire world. But I live in Indiana, that influences how I see the entire world. I have heard that there's a group that I do some advocacy with, the Courage Coalition. I have heard that their social media has really picked up quite a lot recently. And my hypothesis, the reason is unknown. My hypothesis is that with the media exposure from Donald Trump's executive orders, a lot of normies who've been ignoring this stuff have gone, what? They're doing, wait, what? I thought that was just a one-time thing with the swimmer. Wait, what? It's all over the place? What? They're doing what to children? And I think, going back to my thought experiment, that if we take the other side, and out of the 1,000, that there was only 100 people who cared about the issue, I sort of think that the side that I'm on right now is 200 people. Instead of 10 people having very strong views about it, maybe it's 15 people. And that could potentially go badly if this becomes some sort of social, what is the word for it, where something starts to go crazy? The
mass hysteria?
Mass hysteria. It could be a mass hysteria of, oh my gosh, we have to stop the trans. And that could be bad. But the way I tend to see it, I believe that the real battle is not for winning the people who are at the edges. My belief is winning people in the middle and having that marginal person make a decision that your side is the correct side. So I would rather have 100 moderately committal people join my side than 5 zealous people join my side. Because if those 100 people will trust that my insights and my prescriptions are helpful for addressing something that now more people agree is a social ill that needs address, then that's good for me. I want to win, And I want to win without having to create mass hysteria. The 10 people on the other side who I can never convince, as long as I can marginalize them so that they have very little influence or power, I win. Last week, I believe I brought up my observation that the ACLU level of contributions has been dropping precipitously. And I don't know why. I really don't know why. But that's a win for me when that happens, because the ACLU is so committed to extending gender ideology into every facet of our policy and personal lives. So less money for them is a win. Any of these groups, if they have less money, is a win for me. NPR, my belief, I haven't looked at their numbers, but my belief is that their numbers of contributions have gone down. I think I've seen that. They might even, didn't they have some layoffs last year as well? So I cannot control what NPR chooses as far as their editorial content goes. But if fewer and fewer people listen to them, if it was 100 people 5 years ago and now it's 50 people, that's good for me also. It's really hard for me to know, because there's not a gauge that I can go out to and that it shows how the views have changed. I mean, there's the polling, but I want to win in the long run. And that means that people who have neutral opinions, which is the vast majority of people, I want more of those people to form an opinion, and that their opinion is that my views are correct.
It is interesting that you point out that, you have the Indiana perspective where, you have a bunch of normies and they're trying to figure out what they think about it. And Lisa's social world is like the 10 most indoctrinated people. And so, of course, you guys are going to come at it from a different place, because Lisa's having this constant friction and you're seeing people like looking at the issue for the first time and being like, wow, this doesn't seem right.
But I want to point out that I live in the place where people who work for NPR and the New York Times, et cetera, work. Like, I am living among the people presenting myths as facts to the rest of the community. So, I mean, when I look back at this, it's like one of my, I mean, I haven't talked to her in years and she probably hates me now, but one of my friends wrote one of the first books about trans teens. I even hooked her up with my agent at the time. One of my friends, good friends, made the 2015 trans kid documentary that Jamie saw that, impelled her into this world. I mean, like, I am among the content makers. I mean, I have a source in the neighborhood who also hates me, but at least would talk to me, who is responsible for a lot of what's taught in schools. So are we the elite minority? Yes. But our views are the ones who are that are institutionalized. And these are the views that are protected by law or encased in censorship or presented as the moral high ground, so that objection makes you a bigot. And that, I think, is the whole issue here. This is what all of what's gone so horribly wrong with quote unquote gender affirming care is that when these people were thinking about laws and policies to quote unquote protect trans youth, the idea was there are going to be a couple of these kids in every state. But as I've said before, you actually cannot make policy for those 2 kids out of hundreds of thousands and then impose it onto everybody. And I think this is part of the social media world, and what's happened to the mass media is listening to the 1%, right, with extreme views, listening, social media allowed the marginalized voices to be heard, but just because you're marginalized doesn't mean you're morally correct. So we've got this incredible imbalance where the people with the extreme views are now controlling the media narrative, still controlling it, and still being unwilling to shift. When these media outlets are reporting about clinics shutting down, they are not saying, oh, the CAS review found kids were getting hurt, there's no evidence, and they shut it down. They're not talking about Sweden and Finland. They're not talking about systematic evidence reviews. They're still listening to their own deeply biased ideas, and they're the masters of the narrative.
Well, but and to put Corey's like kind of optimistic veneer on that, because because you did sound very optimistic, Corey. You have a very positive perspective, and not that yours is negative, Lisa, but that, you know, kind of zooming out a little bit, people's faith, the American public's trust and faith in media and these mainstream media laws has fallen precipitously. So they're still, digging in, but their audience is falling. News outlets that are independent are sprouting up, and people are getting their news from different sources. People are seeking out news across, political they're looking at news that was traditionally deemed conservative or right wing or branded in these different ways, and they're broadening their perspective in that way. The Corey mentioned, as long as the people that those 10 people are marginalized, that they don't have the power, then I win. Well, dollars and cents, that speaks volumes, and we can, these media outlets are being marginalized in a way. I mean, they're downsizing, and they're firing staff, and they are marginalizing themselves from the American public. And so do you think that is that one way to look at it too? I mean, do you think that there's been movement there?
Well, everybody's playing the NPR game. It feels like.
Yeah, the NPR game. NPR was never the same for me after hearing Katie Herzog talk about, she turns it on and counts how many times they're talking about race, and it's like every time, except
Yeah,
now
how long it
it's
takes
more.
until they talk about like race or gender.
Yeah.
And I wonder how many people independently derived that game, because I was playing that for years before I heard Katie mention it. It was like, yes, I do this like every day, and then it lasts about 2 minutes.
Well, what's
Can I
funny in
give an
the
anecdote?
oh, go ahead.
Last year or the year before, maybe it was the year before, I scheduled an appointment with the president of our local public radio affiliate, who offered me 30 minutes. I am a former giver to our local affiliate, WFYI, and it was generous of the president to grant me some of his time, but I wanted to explain to him why I no longer donate. And my complaints are chiefly those that we're talking about, but it's not only on gender, it's on so many topics where the coverage is extremely biased. And what he told me is that the young people who now flock to public radio have no reverence at all for the Walter Cronkites or that class of journalist, the people who we think of as telling you all the news and chasing down all the angles, trying to sort it all out, the investigative journalists. That's no longer an archetype that the millennials or the Gen Z people seek out. They are now trying to implement their views of social justice through the medium of news. And he said that there's not a lot that he feels like he can do about it, but that he acknowledged that he sees it happening. And I begged him, you are the president, in your capacity of this institution, you can shift the culture, you can set the culture, you can listen to the news product that your team is generating and give them notes on where their bias has come through and where they had opportunities to include other viewpoints but chose not to. You have that ability. And I have a couple of times since that meeting tuned into the local NPR affiliate, and I'm afraid to say that I haven't noticed any change. But again, this sort of comes back to that thought experiment. How many stories do I need to listen to before I notice that there's a change? If I'm only hearing a small sample, I might come to a bad conclusion. But I would encourage anybody who gives money to public radio or public television to reach out to the leadership of your local affiliates and say, I would like to have an in-person meeting or Zoom meeting and have you listen to my viewpoints about the value that I'm getting from my donation or about the product that you are putting out on the airwaves.
I've made, as you can imagine, I've made many such requests. And maybe I should stop listening, except my goal is to not get radicalized. And I also feel it's important for me to understand how this is being presented to the people who support it, even all of the people who don't have strong beliefs about it. In fact, those are the people it's most important to correct the record for.
Yes.
And to empower them to say, no, we don't. We actually, I think a lot of people support the idea of trans rights, but they didn't know it meant give a mastectomy to a depressed teen girl or let a natal male, best a young woman on the track team. So when we drill down on what that is, when we present it in all its complexity, and then we root it in fundamental truths about biology, it helps people move the way you're talking about. But I can't, I feel, and I think it's okay the way I feel. I feel a little battered right now and a little confused. And meanwhile, I'm writing this book, I'm making some progress, and my book is How Did We Get Here? How did we get to the point where it's heresy to say biological sex is real, and people will stand in the street and scream for the right to give their daughter a mastectomy or for the right to remove their son's penis? Like that, how did we get here? And it doesn't matter what Trump is doing, and it doesn't matter what's happening right now, because my job is to explain that. But when people are feeling assaulted, nuance generally goes out the window. And I guess I figured nuance was the path to all those people in the middle. And maybe it's temporary, but it's hard. Yeah.
I unfortunately, as I sometimes do, I have to leave early. I won't be able to wait till the end to give my special thought. So do you mind if I just drop that here and then I'll run?
Please do.
No, we want it.
All
we
right.
want it.
Okay. It's sad this time.
Okay.
But I have to announce the closure of my gender-affirming sex dungeon because of a sudden and dramatic loss of financial support from U.S. aid. So no more of that.
Okay. No more sex dungeon.
Damn you, Elon Musk.
No more gender-affirming sex dungeon.
What happened there? Can we?
Yeah, it's Elon Musk's fault. I really
Well,
I really gotta go.
what went on in the sex dungeon, you're saying, Lisa?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
probably the
Ben
Wachowski
can fill
brothers
you in. I
sisters
gotta
were in
go.
there.
I'll see you later.
Oh, bye, Cori.
Oh my God. Well, speaking of that USAID thing, I mean, there was that reporting where, like in South Africa, uh, there was USAID going to, transgender services in the poorest regions. And then I've read reporting from Brandon Showalter works for, is it the Christian Post or
Yeah.
is that what it is? And his colleague there had written a piece that he was there,
Oh,
advocate. Did you read that? I'm going to put it in
No.
the show notes.
yeah.
So, because, someone we know had tweeted, like, what the hell is this about? Like, talking about how it was uncovered that there was USAID, some USAID was funding support for transgender services in different areas and specifically South Africa, but also elsewhere, as far as I know. Um, and Brandon said, yes, I saw this too. My colleague reported on this a couple years ago, and he has a personal essay about being there and trying to help impoverished people get access to medicine and get access to food and water, clean water. And he sees this USAID car and he's like, "Oh wow, this is cool. I didn't even realize that there." So he walks over and he sees, I think it's four people in the car and they get out and he says they're all in various, look to be even various stages of transitioning. And they said, "We're here to provide gender affirming care for trans people. That's what our," and he said, well, it seems like there's a lot of other things to work. And they said, "Oh, well, this is life this is life affirming care. This is what they need." Um, it's unreal. It's unreal.
Life
Um,
affirming. I mean, that's some crazy concept creep right there. Because,
if they did say that specific phrase,
well, has that been that came up
I
in?
I hadn't heard that one until this week, but
that protest.
certainly it's not a big leap from life-saving gender affirming care to life affirming care. Somebody just got an editor and cut a few words
Exactly.
out.
Yeah.
Um, so we should talk about, because we're always at risk of running out of time.
Yeah.
What would we
We're
want
at
to
an hour.
communicate to Democrats and Republicans right now?
What's our
Um,
message? And what's our message? Is there anything we could say to these people who now feel, if once they're kind of, they want a trans genocide was hyperbole, um, maybe it looks a little more accurate now. It's impossible. It's impossible to explain to someone that they've participated in a self-fulfilling prophecy. I don't want to say I told you so. I keep trying to explain that this wrath that's been unleashed is a response to left-wing overreach, but they're not receptive to that message. And I guess what I hope that parents would say to their children, that school, I don't want school administrators to say anything about any of these political things. I begged my
mhm.
school not to make a statement. I wrote to the superintendent, who ignores every one of my emails, saying, I said, there are feminists, liberals, gays, lesbians, transsexuals, and all of Staten Island who agree with some of these things. And the DOE is for all of us. So you cannot make a statement, that eclipses the needs, desires, beliefs, etc., of entire swaths of people. But what
Mhm.
I would want the grown-ups to communicate to the children, especially, is you're going to be okay. This is an opportunity for you to strengthen yourself and to face adversity. You have an understanding of yourself and you have a right to that understanding, but other people may not agree and the law may not be on your side right now, and you're going to make it through this. And let's be curious about how we got to this point, shall we?
Mhm.
I know no one is going to say that, but wouldn't that be awesome?
Awesome. I love it.
That's my message.
What about
What
you,
about you, Ben?
Eliza? Oh, me? Well, I wrote that piece last week about the suicide myth, and
Yeah.
and talking about how, the Movement Advancement Project in 2017 developed this guide, talking about LGBT populations and suicide and reporting on it, and that they list the Trevor Project, GLAAD, HRC as partners on the cover of this guide, and they state, don't ever say suicide epidemics. This can create suicide contagions, or don't report that specific bills passing or not passing can lead to suicide. That can
Never say
actually
it's from one thing.
it never it's from
Never.
one
Yeah.
thing that young people or people that are struggling can think that, oh, suicide is a natural, or suicide ideation even, or desire to kill oneself is a natural response to this, and not. And then, I list in that article all of these examples of GLAAD, the Trevor Project, HRC, and news media outlets violating these exact guidelines horrifically. I mean, horribly,
Yeah.
directly. And then I talk about, what actual studies have found about it, like the Finnish study last year, which showed that suicide is rare among this cohort of young people who are seeking gender, treatment at clinics. And that, suicidal ideation, which is thinking about suicide or contemplating it, is not rare. That's common, but that's common among this population, but it's common among the general population who struggle with mental health difficulties. That when they controlled
Mhm.
for co-occurring mental health issues, that there was no difference, And then there was out of the UK, there was, Lisa, might know this stat better than me, but like 4 out of 10,000, I think, had had actually died by completed suicide over a certain amount of time. So like 0.03%, which matches the general population statistics for suicide. And that two of those kids were receiving treatment.
Yeah.
So these it's false. And like Lisa just said, resilience, like that it should be the opposite. It should be, you're strong, you can do this, you can make it. I mean, it's one thing to cut out the curriculum has to go. Like there people we have to start saying no. Like there for so many I was texting about this too, and it's like in some regards the Nancy Mace Trump EO approach is like, perhaps needed in some respects, because the craziest ideas, people with the craziest have been told yes for a very long time now.
Hmm.
And it's had real life consequences. We see them all around us. And so, yes, the nuance, reasoning with people, but also saying no, saying this can't go on anymore, no more. And having and so with that being said, I write this piece, and I texted you guys, and I was like, God, I love seeing, like, in my junk mail, like, friends who I've known for so long, like
Yeah.
unsubscribing to my newsletter,
I didn't
after I
realize it
put
was
this
after
out.
that piece in particular.
Yeah, and it's like, and Eliza brought up a good point. She's like, well, have you always been writing about specifically about this stuff? Maybe people just don't really want to, and I get that, I do get that, but it's like, what is the proper tone to take?
Yeah.
What is the tone one must take? I mean, I know that I wrote, okay, LGBT organizations are probably causing more harm than a Trump executive order ever could to young people, which I think is the truth. I do believe this.
Yeah.
When you're violating these principles, and then Trump is saying, "Hey, I really do believe that." That's probably really hard for someone to hear. That's complete, like seeing what Musk is doing and seeing what he's doing else otherwise, and isn't familiar with these issues. It might be really hard. So, but really, what is the tone how when kids are being castrated, and when young troubled girls are getting mastectomies, and when women are losing when the UN is releasing reports on the 600 or so females that have been affected by this, and the injuries that women have
Mhm.
experienced as a result of competing against males. Like, what's the tone that one must take? So it's discouraging to see that, but I guess it's like continuing to, and also I know I'm kind of going on here, but I'm finishing my book. And I was speaking with my editor. It's great. It's exciting and it's going really well. I'm speaking with my editor and we had a really good conversation yesterday because he said, "You have this tick to present information, facts, and reporting and expect the reader to like know what you're showing them, you know?" And I said, and he's like, "You kind of just need to tell us what we're supposed to think about this, you know?" And I'm like, I do realize that in some cases I do that, and especially in the most, like, I need people to understand this situations, because in my head I'm arguing with those trans activists who look me dead in the eye and gaslight me and say, "You're insane and this is not happening and what you're seeing is not going
Mhm.
on." And I'm giving all the evidence. Yes, see this, these, and he's like, we can come along on the ride for this, but this gets to be laborious for us. Like, we don't need this. And I'm like, you're right.
I
I'm,
got the same note.
I'm,
That's my
you
problem
did?
too.
And
Well,
I'm
yeah,
like,
I'm behind the reporting and we have to have ingested the reporting and spit it out. But I think what we maybe you and I need to realize is that we're speaking to all the people in the middle. We have to stop speaking to the 10%,
that's
which is,
ex
I guess, the lesson of this podcast today.
right. I think you're right, Lisa. I think you're right. It's like we have to stop. There's the people in the middle. And they're not going to buy my book. Maybe one of them will get it
Maybe to
for
burn it.
free to burn it or to review it, in the Nation or something like that and give it a shitty review. I mean, who knows? Maybe it'll be the hill that Chase Strangio wants to die on this time,
Yeah,
banning that book. I don't know. But Eliza, what
you
about
do
you? What
want
do you
it.
think?
Um, I just I think last week we spent some time and I wrote something about what I would want to say to young people, and I think I can't say it better than what you guys have just said in terms of talking to young people. I think what I'd want to say to Republicans and to people who like I have gotten a lot of pushback for saying like we can, it's really, really, really hard to do something like what we're trying to do right now, which is how does the government divest from a deeply misguided crusade where the previous administration went all in and said that it was, the next human rights movement and it was life-saving gender affirming care. And like, how does the government walk that back? And I don't think no matter who was in power that there was going to be a like good way to do that. Because this is not a situation that we should have ever been in. And it's a situation we have no idea how to get out of in a, minimally like damaging way. And it's especially hard when it's Trump. And it's especially hard when people are so understandably just wrung out from years and years and years of being called bigots for having reasonable concerns, for worrying about their kids and what they're being taught at school, for maybe losing young adult children to, you know, estrangement through this. It's really hard to say, like, and now that the things that, we think that need to happen are happening, can we have, as much grace as we can possibly muster for the people who are on the receiving end, who see these things, these are things that like, okay, not having an X on your passport. This is like a completely absurd thing to me. The idea that we would ever, falsify people's identification documents. It's like, this is something that the government should just have never, ever, ever cared about. This is a personal belief. It's absurd. People are allowed to believe it. The government should never have played into it, but they did, and people are really frightened. Or the rollback of gender affirming care, it's like we can think that these beliefs are toxic, that they have caused harm to the people who hold them and to the people on whom these beliefs are enforced. And also say, and these are also beliefs that are like treasured by some very vulnerable people as the deepest truths about themselves that they feel like they're getting kicked in the face. And if we can if we can try to remember that, like, we are living through a really, really heated, kind of unhinged on all sides cultural moment, um, and just understand where people are, and that it's not where we hope that everybody is in the future. We hope that we can all get back on the same page about some, reality is the basis of politics, but that we're not there right now. And that we need to be as, not to lie to people, not to say things that we don't think are true, but not to like go in front of Congress and say tranny, 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 for example,
Mm, mm,
Like Nancy Mace.
right.
Yeah,
like Nancy Mace this
yeah.
week.
Well, that's beautifully, beautifully put, Eliza.
Definitely.
I say we end on that note. Oh, wait, except she has more.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say, like, and I worry in terms of like talking to progressives, seeing the rallies this week and reading the news coverage, and like the Cynthia Nixon thing where she like completely lays out a social contagion of like her daughter and her siblings' daughter and her best friend's child and her child's best friend, and they're all trans and they all, need this. I really wonder the extent to which people who have gone all in the way that, Cynthia Nixon and a lot of parents and a lot of activists and a lot of people who have transitioned themselves have, like, to what extent are they ever going to be able to accept what they've done and supported, and that it was not what they thought they were doing and supporting? I don't know. We just are really off the edge of the map here in terms of how we got here
Mhm.
and how we get out of here.
Yeah, it's like now that maybe that's a question we can consider in the future. Like, what do you say to the parents who
Yeah.
have, transitioned their kids or signed their kids up for mastectomies? And, let's say these services are no longer, but let's say the EO sticks. Let's say the hospitals continue to fall like dominoes. Let's say state laws
Mhm.
change. Let's say Tish James's letter doesn't work. And, let's say this isn't available. What do we say to the parents who are like, I got to move to Canada, and maybe it's not
Right.
available in Canada anymore? I mean, what do we say to them? Maybe that's something to think about too.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
something to think about too. And it also, I see like much smaller scale versions of this on the online trans communities all the time, where there will be some version of like, oh, the insurance company like rejected my appeal to cover my top surgery. And they said it wasn't medically necessary. And there's this moment where they're like, does that mean it's not medically necessary?
Mm.
And that it kind of joins with the self-doubt that has been, they've been trying to contain and suppress and pathologize. And yeah, I don't think that we know what happens when we take this away and how people are going to deal with that.
Hmm.
Well, tune in next week to find out.
Yeah.
Let's do
We will have figured it all out by next Friday.
let's do recommendations.
Yeah, let's do that.
Ben, do
Oh,
you have one this week?
I'm gonna have one.
Have you had
I need to
have you
come
done anything
prepared.
fun?
I need to come
You need to, you
prepared.
had your
I
birthday.
had my
What'd you do for
birthday.
your
My
birthday?
birthday was
Happy
on
birthday to Ben.
Wednesday. And my husband took me out, and my friend took me out the other night. We went out to dinner, and it was great. I'm 42. A lot of people, and I felt the love. Like, let's talk about maybe my non-gender thing is just feeling the love. I mean, Lisa messaged me some really kind and meaningful stuff that I cherish. And from my friend who I went out to dinner with, she was like, I was in my therapy session, and sorry, I'm not going to mention her name, but she's in her therapy session, and my therapist was asking me like, what makes me happy? What do I feel safe? And my friend Ben was like the first thing that she put, she told me that she put, and it just
Oh,
meant so much. So, and then my another close friend who I've been friends with for over 20 years, sends me a card, and there's you know, I don't know, she's got a baby, and there's a picture with us, and it's just it means a lot to. I think that that's really important right now, is to, because when you have friends unsubscribing from your Substack because you've said, I don't know, Trump was right, or in this regard,
Or
or
crazy stuff like don't terrify people into thinking they should commit suicide
right,
as a
right,
reasonable response
right.
to, yeah,
Yeah, or you
I don't
see
know.
what's going, and you see this, connecting with people that do love you and know you, know your heart,
Yeah.
but also know what's going on is so important. Um, so
Feel the
that's what
love.
feel the love. Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you
Eliza,
guys?
recommendation?
I have to think about a recommendation, but I have news that I forgot last week, which
Oh,
is that um I did not think that this was going to happen anymore because it's been a while, but I signed a book contract with Polity and will be
yay!
writing a book
Yay.
about, yeah, gender as a siren song that appeals to patients and clinicians and why that is. And it'll really be about the psychology of those two groups. So I hope that it will be a little bit different from what's already out there, and very excited. But that is totally gender related. So non-gender related,
But yay, and
But yay, really,
congratulations.
but
congratulations.
We're all
yay.
going to have books if I finish
Yeah.
mine someday.
Yeah,
Anything
non-gender.
that's brought you some joy in the past week?
She's doing what I'm doing, looking around her office. That's what I
I know,
do
I'm
when
looking
we're
around,
in
I'm
this
like, what have
conversation. I
I
always
been
look around. I'm
doing?
like, oh my God, what have I, what excites me?
I don't know. I feel like I got a very like I ordered something from like Thailand and it arrived and it was the wrong thing and they don't want it back and it's really crazy. And I feel like I should bring it out here and ask if anybody wants it. But maybe
Do
maybe
that
we
next
shouldn't.
week.
I
Is it
could do
like
that
a
next
is it
week.
like a clothing item or like what is it?
I think it's like a purse
Okay.
or something.
Okay.
This could be like our merger with like your CVS home or CVC. What is it? The Home Shopping Channel Dreams?
QVC.
We could make QVC. Okay.
I'd actually,
Yes.
I think I would enjoy being a QVC host because maybe if it was anyway for team
Yeah.
moves,
Anyway,
yeah.
it is something that's very colorful and it is too out there even for me.
Try to
So,
remember next week so that you can show it. Maybe we'll have, because
Yeah,
people might be
show and
curious.
tell.
They really might be
well,
curious.
it's okay. Let me just get it because it's like
Okay.
1 minute away.
All right,
It's 1 minute away. Lisa, what's yours?
I'll do my, I had one, but I'm gonna say psychedelic therapy is my recommendation because I've found it incredibly helpful.
Okay.
Mushroom therapy. Wait, I'm finishing mine,
If
and I just
you,
want to say, after I did my fourth round of mushroom therapy on Monday was my fourth, and I don't know, I was doing it mostly to help with a book, but I said very little, believe it or not, all day while I was intensely on another planet. And except I had a lot of thoughts about both of you. So I actually reached out
yes.
to both of you after. So I mean, and I guess you're very in my life
Yeah.
right now, but my recommendation is psychedelic therapy. Yeah. Okay, let's see the
Okay.
purse. Let's see the purse.
All right. Do
Okay.
either of you want this?
I say that
It's a lot.
I
So
say we should give it to a paid
Oh,
subscriber who wants it.
that is a lot. That
it's
is
a
a lot.
lot.
And it's cool. So and is
I
that
like it.
open? Is that a flap that opens like that? So it's almost like a
Yes, sorry, I haven't
portfolio.
watched.
It looks like an
I think
iPad.
it's
You could
like
keep
a
an iPad in it.
clutch.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, you could
Or
put an iPad in it.
could you put a 13-inch laptop, MacBook in it?
No.
Okay. So you can put an iPad in it. So for listeners, it's a very colorful. You
Looks
said
like a
from
Frida
Thailand.
Kahlo dress.
It does. It looks a little Frida Kahlo. Yes, Frida
It
Kahlo-ish. Yeah.
does. Anyway,
Um,
if somebody in the US wants this and wants to pay for shipping, I will send it to you.
that's lovely.
Paid subscriber.
Yes.
I don't know why I'm saying.
Anybody.
Oh, anybody. I'm
Who?
sorry. I'm being a capitalist. It
All
won't
right.
happen again.
It's a statement. If you want to make this particular statement, let me know.
What is the statement?
Well,
And did you order that after looking at the picture?
this is not what I ordered. This arrived because they made a
Oh,
mistake and
I
they said
see.
to just keep it. And it was like, thank you.
Okay.
I don't know. It's not really what I had in
Well,
mind.
I love the idea of you sending it to a reader or listener. I
Me
mean,
too.
listener or watcher. Well, someone might
Yeah.
read the transcript.
And my
All right.
newsletter.
Well, that
You
took
know,
a
the
different
news,
route.
the weekly
And
roundup,
your newsletter. Yes.
weekly news roundup. There's that for paid subscribers as well. That's dropping in well, for listeners who hear this, it will have come out yesterday. So anyway,
Go back in time.
go
Okay.
back in time.
Thank
Thanks.
you to all the audience members and my dear co-host pals.
Yep. Good to see you guys.
You too. Have a great week, everyone.
Bye.